John Harvey, you are the producer of Spear,
Yep.
the movie. So Spear is the first film produced by the Bangarra Dance Theatre group, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did the film come about?
Well, Stephen and I, we did that film for The Turning, and this opportunity really came up, and it was through the Adelaide Film Festival. They have a Hive initiative, which is set up to have collaborations between artists and filmmakers. And Rob and I, we went to a Bangarra show down at the Arts Centre there, and then got talking to Stephen afterwards, and asked him if there was a story maybe within the Bangarra repertoire that he'd like to kind of adapt for screen. And yeah, Stephen felt that Spear was probably the most appropriate work that he had. The original stage show was done in 2000, and that was I think he said it's a 37-minute work.
And what is the story
Yeah.
or the through line of Spear?
Yeah.
Because it's a very enigmatic work.
Yeah. It's about a young guy named Charlie, who's played by Hunter Page Lashard, and he's exploring what it means to be a man in a contemporary world, and having links with his traditions, and he goes on this journey, and there's these kind of vignettes of different experiences he sees through the eyes of different characters within the film.
Very different experiences.
Yeah.
The key line in the film is...
A foot in both worlds, a heart in none.
That's right.
Yeah.
A foot in both
Yeah.
worlds and a heart in none.
Yeah.
Which seems to crystallise the dilemma of many urban indigenous people,
Yeah.
fair to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for many people, many people feel that they're sometimes a stranger in their own country,
It's
the
very
way
much
people...
a sense of dislocation in a lot of the numbers. And I wanted to ask you about that, about what you want the response to the film to be.
Yeah. I think it's very much a film that's told with a spirit and an energy. And for us, it's about people connecting with that energy and connecting with that ceremony of storytelling. And Stephen often talks about, like, it's told through gesture and dance. It's not a literal film. And so people, who's, I guess if you're used to going into films and thinking things through, then probably don't with this one. Just sit and be, and just let it play, and let yourself open your heart, open your spirit, and just connect with that film on that level. And that's ultimately, it's a really unique cinematic experience of ceremony and storytelling, and yeah, we just want people to open themselves to be able to connect with that.
Do you want white audiences in particular to respond to the film in a particular way?
Yeah, well, all audiences, yeah. I think, yeah, I think the energy about this film is about connecting with the spirit, and that human spirit that we all have.
Now, first off, I've got to congratulate you for making it a movie. I mean, you're always worried when a dance company is going to make a film. And I'm glad to say that some of the dance films I've seen recently have really made the camera part of the troupe. So congratulations on actually moving the camera and using locations to effect stuff that you couldn't obviously do on stage. I just want to know about the approach you took when you went into making this movie. Did you say, we really want to make this as cinematic as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't a work that we wanted to do where, okay, let's just do Spear on the stage, we'll set up 4 or 5 cameras and film it, and that was the challenge for us, is to make this cinematic experience. And for Stephen, it was about, he wanted to keep that energy and spirit of Bangarra. So when you see that live performance, he wanted to keep that within the film and not lose that. And we're working within a budget and trying to think about, well, what are the locations that can help tell these stories? And I think that was really special for Stephen as well.
Now you have the 2 male characters in the film. You have the young man who is the one who appears to be on the search, on the journey Then you have the Aaron Peterson character, who appears to represent a loss of self-respect. He's there making racist jokes. You also have that extraordinary sequence with the beer bottles in the car crash.
Yeah.
Is loss of self-respect among some Indigenous people part of the theme of the film and of the dances?
Yeah, it's loss of self-respect, loss of spirit, and I think that's the journey that Charlie's going on, and he needs to connect his spirit in order to kind of keep going on his journey in life. And I think you see Aaron's role, which he plays fantastically, and he's a man who's broken. He has tried to be within a society. He has tried to, have the job but his spirit's broken.
I'm very keen to know the philosophy that you and Stephen Page took when you made this movie, that kind of approach is necessary if people are to take the film seriously.
Yeah. I mean, I think Stephen didn't want to shy away, like the incarceration rates are very high, the death, suicide rates are very high, like there's very serious issues in the community, and, he didn't want to shy away from that, and to be able to explore those stories through dance and these are things that young men are growing up with, are seen in their community, are experiencing within their families, and it's well, how do people prepare themselves for that, or how do they have those tools to keep going with their life?
The film does seem to end with a sense of connection the young man actually finds with, I think, both worlds through connecting with his own culture. Before we get there, though, you have that remarkable sequence where you have that song, My Boomerang Won't Come Back, and the dance sequence set to that. Can you just explain that to us? Because it's bizarre. It's a comedy song that, as performed, is not funny. And I wanted to know what the intent was behind that sequence.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's Stephen kind of having a look at a song that went to number one on the charts, that's highly offensive and highly racist, and taking a snapshot of this country and a snapshot of time,
Sorry.
And the absurdity of it. You're right, it's the absurdity of it, and
Were you also saying through the presentation of that, because the jarring dance movements really make it clear that while Indigenous people have a great sense of humour, this is not funny. But that if you don't step up and define your culture, it's going to be defined anyway. And it's up to you whether you allow other people to define it or you define it yourself. I took that as the message from that sequence.
Yeah, I mean, I think Indigenous people are always placed in a box in this country, are always defined. People love to talk about how they know what's best for the Indigenous community. I think that's a really common thing that we have. And, I guess, so the costumes that the dancers are wearing in that dance, it's kind of a tribute to the portrayal of Indigenous people by non-Indigenous people in this country, and also it's I think it's also a lighter moment in the film as well, and Stephen wanted to kind of have these lighter moments. He didn't, the film touches on some pretty heavy issues, and goes to dark places, but he also wanted to have this kind of light.
Well, it's a high key moment.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call it.
It's not.
Call it a comedy
No, it's
moment.
not.
Yeah.
I laugh at it.
Didn't the ABC take it off their playlist?
I think they did.
Which
yeah.
is fair enough after all this time. Listen, I had the pleasure of speaking to Deborah Mailman
Oh yeah.
recently, and I took the opportunity to ask her about mass audiences. The general white audience, movie audience out there, is now very accepting of movies with Indigenous themes. We've had the success of The Sapphires, Brand New Day, Samson and Delilah. 20 years ago, great movies about indigenous culture were being released. Fringe Dwellers, Short Change, and so on. You couldn't sell a ticket. You couldn't give tickets away to these movies. Indigenous people were seen as box office poison. That's now reversed. People are very welcoming of seeing Indigenous people up on screen and seeing their stories. John Harvey, what's changed?
Maybe the country has, you know. Maybe people have become more aware of Indigenous stories and want to learn more. You know, and cinema is a fantastic way of having that intimate connection, you know, with story and with people through characters, you know, and certainly like over that period, there's been a lot of Indigenous filmmakers come through, making these extraordinary films that are doing well in Australia and well overseas. And I think, you know, the more Indigenous filmmakers and storytellers that come through, you know, the more, yeah, it's kind of nice because there's more opportunities to tell those stories. And you know, certainly audiences supporting those films help that, you know, and both within the cinema and on television as well.
As well as them being honest. And for instance, in Last Cab to Darwin, there's a wonderful Indigenous sub-story in that film where they deal with Indigenous issues quite honestly and quite up front. That as well as that, they're coupled to genre filmmaking. They're entertainments. Do you think that helps as well? Just making the package entertaining, getting the message through an entertaining package?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what is the life of this movie going to be? You've got some event screenings, then it's going to have presumably a limited run at some art house cinemas, which is always nice. What happens beyond that, John? As a producer of a film, what is the life of a movie? Yeah,
well, this will go on to the ABC later in the year as well, so it'll screen there. And you know, at the moment we're doing a schools kit for it. I think it's a wonderful one for students to study, like it's secondary students, and to explore issues within the Indigenous community. And that's, you know, I'd love to see it on that.
That's a key thing for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
The fact that it's going to be part of an educational thing.
Yeah, and it's, you know, fantastic film for young people who are at that point in their lives where, you know, you're going from a child, you're wanting more independence, and, you know, you are in a world where there's drugs, where there's alcohol, you know, there's a whole myriad of things happening. And you know, Charlie sees those experiences played out, you know, and I think that's a great thing for young people to explore. And
what's the power of cinema?
I think it has the ability to connect people in a really intimate way with story and people, you know, and this film, people who watch a lot of Bangarra performances, you know, are quite blown away to be so close to the dancers, and that's a pretty incredible and powerful thing.
What you guys have done here is that you've put the audience in the troupe.
Yeah.
And that's the power of cinema. When you're watching it on stage, you have that wall. And I think that's the advantage that cinema has, and one that you've played to in the making of this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was also, you know, a challenge for the dancers, because they're used to having the audience back there, you know, and a 1,000-seat house or something, and the audience is there. And for them as performers to understand that camera can see, you know, very close. And I think their performance are a real tribute to who they are as storytellers, like incredible performances.
I'm interested to know just a bit about that, about the dancers and their attitude to the camera. Did they have to be initiated into how to play to the camera?
They did a little bit. Just, I mean, in the sense that know that this, when we go in for a close-up, this is what we're seeing, and know that everything here is carried to the camera. But in terms of, you know, they just immerse themselves in the role. And they're actually fantastic actors, you know, like they are 100% committed and truthful and in the moment. And that's all you can ever ask, you know, and it's quite a beautiful thing to watch.
Are you planning on making more films with Bangarra?
Yeah, we want to do some more films with Stephen, and, you know, he he did Sand and said, "I'll never make another film again. I'll go back to the theatre."
Why
And now
is
we've
that?
done Spear. I think just the process is sometimes very hard, as it is. But he's done a feature now, and he's got a lot of stories in him. He's got a lot of fantastic stories. Yeah.
You're a film producer. You should be convincing him that cinema is the ultimate art form, and that he should be getting his dance pieces on film. You got to convince him of this, mate.
Absolutely, and that's the great thing about Spear is it's this legacy of his work, and it's just like your contribution, Stephen, to dance and storytelling in this country is extraordinary, and then to have that on something that's going to last forever.
You have got the lightest online footprint of any person I've spoken. If you Google your name, nothing comes up. If you Google news, your name, nothing comes up. If you Google images, your name, Britney Spears pictures come up. So,
Britney Spears images
Britney
for
Spears
John
comes
Harvey.
up.
Wow.
I think there's one or two pictures of you.
I can
then
see the
Britney
similarity.
Spears. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah.
Give us a bit of a bio.
Yeah. I'm the producer for Spear. My background is my mum's from the Torres Strait, from Saibai Island in the Torres Strait, and my dad's from England. And I come from a theatre background. I used to work at Ilbidgery Theatre in Melbourne. I was a general manager there and did producing of theatre, and then kind of got into film around 2008. And
doing what? What have you done?
I've done a lot of short films, short dramas, indigenous short films. I've done quite a few of those over the years, and actually did one with Stephen Page, the director of Spear. We did a chapter of The Turning called Sand, based on Tim Winton's book, The Turning.
Produced by Robert Connolly, who's also a producer of Spear.
That's right, he's the executive producer, yeah. And I actually did a internship with Rob, a producer internship with Rob, and have kind of been working with him since, really, and collaborating on stuff, and like Spear.